Hi ladies, this is week 8 and finally we are on week 8 and we've done a great job so far, I believe. And let's get you understand how mixing works, because we had a lot of questions about it. Now we can at least understand what these guys are doing. If you're a beginner, you can still benefit from this video. If you're an advanced producer and trying to understand if you need mixing lessons or not, if it's going to help you or not, you can still benefit from this video. Let's get into it. Why you need it, why you do not need it. How can you learn mixing? You can learn mixing on YouTube tutorials, you can take classes, you can go on forums and start reading, you can go to music production school and pay $20,000 a year to learn it, or you can do all of them. But please do not do it unless you understand what it means to you and how this can help you achieve your music goals. So this part is important because it really is, this topic is like really taking years and years. Goals check, you should always check your goals. I want to be a better music producer. Yes, you should totally learn mixing. I want to be a better mixing engineer. Of course, you should totally learn mixing. I want to be a better producer who has her signature production style. Yes, of course. Goals check, again, we continue. I'm a singer-songwriter. I want to release, my genre is pop, hip-hop. You don't really need to learn mixing for that purpose. Just focus on your songwriting, focus on your production skills, and mostly for your focus on your songwriting, because that's essential. I'm a dance music producer. I want to release, my genre is EDM, house, drum and bass. Of course, you should learn mixing a little bit, at least. I'm a pop music producer. I produce for other artists for a living. Yes, definitely learn mixing. So even learning the basics and ear training can take up to a few years. First, you get it. Second, you process all the information. And third, you finally get it and you're able to apply it properly on your tracks, on your songs. Four, until you get it and apply it properly, it does help you for your music production a lot, even though you think there's no outcome yet. But actually, it is helping you a lot because you don't even notice that, but it is actually helping you to make better decisions during production. If you want to build your signature production style like Diplo, Skrillex, Max Martin, Dr. Luke, Mordabiz in future, of course, start working on your mixing knowledge. So I prepared these charts for bedroom producers who are into pop music. You do not need to learn mixing. You can learn mixing, of course, but it doesn't have to be the part of the work you are supposed to do, you're supposed to know about it. Because you can, once you finish your songs, you can totally send them to mixing engineer, and you can release after. And it's better if you can focus on your songwriting skills. It's just better for you, just as a strategy. So if you're an EDM bedroom producer, just make sure you focus on your production more than your songwriting. Focus on your production and add a little bit mixing on top of all these. Because if you're in electronic dance music, you definitely have to know a little bit of mixing, because when you send your tracks to record labels, most of the time they're gonna expect a finished track. They want to work with people who already know the stuff, who are already comfortable with all these. So that will be one of the essential for you. Hip hop, rap, bedroom producer, no need. You can still learn, but it doesn't have to be the part of your work. So pop, EDM, hip hop, working professional producers, of course, definitely learn mixing. So always goals check your goals. Do you need it or not? Because if you really, really need it, then you're going to start spending time on it. And guess what? It takes time. It definitely takes time. Okay, so you do not have any time to learn mixing, but you still want to know what it is. I got you, don't worry. Did you even know even the basics of mixing can help you communicate better with your collaborators, even though you have nothing to do with mixing? Yes, it does make you feel really, really, really confident. So you can tell, I guess. Sorry, just kidding. Anyways, let's see what this is all about. You got this, girl. All right. First, you need to know everything as data. When it comes to your mixing desk, everything is being treated like data. So your product is data now, because it's on a mixing desk, so, okay. In very professional world, major labels mostly, most mixing engineers will not even touch your song too much, because most of the professional work is already being done by the producers who already are in the industry and produced by applying their mixing knowledge in every step. So I don't know if you know this guy. This guy is a famous mixing engineer, and he's basically explaining what he did with Rihanna's songs. And he keeps saying that the song was almost finished already, so I didn't touch it that much. So that's kind of what this guy is explaining in the professional world. You can totally follow this channel. It's called Pensado's Place. It's a pretty valuable channel. If you want to learn some tips and tricks, definitely follow this channel. If you're an advanced producer, I do highly recommend I follow them. So self-check. So please answer yourself. If you need to send it to a mixing mastering service, why do you even need to spend years on this? To understand, just to understand. This is a question you need to ask to yourself, ladies. Personally, mixing helped me so much because I recommend learning the basic at least, but slowly without frustrating yourself. And know that this is a long process. So accept it in the beginning, okay? Okay, almost 50% of this process is to fix the signal, 20% is to make it sound better and balanced, 25% is to add taste of the mixing engineer by genre by genre. Just like you choose your record label genre by genre. So you can choose your mixing service or mixing engineer by genre. They should choose their mixing engineer by genre. If you're producing dance music and you need a mixing engineer, definitely find somebody who is better at dance music mixing. Okay. How do you know you have a compatible mixing engineer that you can work together for the whole album? How can you know? Just go online, check that engineer's other work. And what you can also do if you do not have any mixing knowledge, you can also find reference tracks. What is reference track? You're just going to tell your mixing engineer that, okay, I want my track to sound exactly like this. When you come to the point that you will release an album, you've worked for it for years, you can simply give reference tracks to your mixing engineer for each song. You can say, okay, this is song number number 2. I want this song sound like a little bit more 70s, a little bit more wet reverb, slap reverb. Of course, you don't have to use all this professional language, but you can just give the mixing reference tracks. Okay, sorry it took too long. Did you know how many times song Thriller was mixed? 91 times. Until they get to the point that they really, really like the mixing of the song. Finally, after 91 times. So you are the upcoming artist. Your taste will be the priority to your engineer. Please don't forget that. Most people are making this mistake. They send it to a mixing engineer and they get the track back and they're like, I'm not happy with it. And then a mixing engineer says that, but this is how it should be. This is how we should sound. No, I'm the artist. You gotta listen to me. I sent you a reference track and this is what I want. So please know that you are the artist and your taste will be the priority to your engineer. If not, then find another engineer. Simple. Okay. Just to give you an example, before mixing and after mixing. So they take your signal and they just turn your signal to this second signal. And of course, there's going to be a mastering process at the end. We can talk about that later too. Let's say you have all these tracks, vocal track, back vocal track, kick drum. You have like 65 channels. And finally, it's time to send all these files to your mixing engineer. And mixing engineer is going to take all these files one by one. Okay, here's my main vocal, here's my back vocal, here's my kick drum. And find the issues, find the problems, fix the signal. How? So basic steps of mixing. Of course, you can add more steps, of course. But basically what they do, actually, I'm not a mixing engineer. Just a DJ and producer who actually knows this stuff because I had to learn because of my genre. Again, because of my genre. Cleaning up lower upper frequencies because human ear can only hear between 20 Hz and 20,000 Hz. EQ low cut, high cut. Finding unwanted resonance. EQ subtractive cleaning. Amplitude control compressor. Cleaning the background noise if there is any. Cleaning up mouth clicks just like this or breath in vocals. Frequency separation. Each instrument lives in a certain area. So we have to separate each of them. Managing the space of the track and stereo imaging, volume automation, parallel processing. Amplitude control, this time is the limiter, and adding more harmonics with the saturation. So there's like a huge list. Let's start with the first one. So we're going to follow the list, okay? Let's start with the first one. Human ears can only hear between 20 Hz and 20 kilohertz. We can see it on the spectrum, but we're not going to hear it. So why do we even need to clean it if we cannot hear it already, right? So I'm trying to clean something that I can't even hear. Correct. Yes, that is unheard. Correct. You will, but when you will process all the signal on top of each other, when you process all the signal one by one, your plugins will detect those frequencies and process them too. And that will create overlapping unwanted frequencies will reduce the other frequencies' presence, and it is called mud in the mix. So let's not get into those details, but just know that human ear can only hear between 20 Hz and 20 kilohertz. So we can see it on the spectrum, but we won't hear it. Dogs can hear it. Cats can hear it, but elephants can also hear them, but you can't. Your human ears can't. So, are you gonna make music for dogs, cats, and elephants, or human ears? So, just get rid of all those frequencies. If they're not between 20 Hz and 20 kilohertz, just get rid of them. Okay, lower than 20 Hz, get rid of them. Higher than 20 kilohertz, 20,000 Hz, get rid of them. That is the first thing we do. Look at this. So this is like a spectrum. This is an equalizer, and what I do, I just get rid of. Look, let me just draw it for you quickly. Okay. So what I do, here's a 20 Hertz, 20 Hertz, and here's 20K. Okay. So this part, dogs can hear it, elephants can hear it. This part, other animals can hear it, but human can only hear this part. So why do you need to keep these, right? These are going to be a problem for you. That's why we use EQ cuts. That's why we use EQ cuts, a high pass filter mostly, and low pass filter. Exactly like this. So cut the lows, your vocals. Just to give you an example, let's say this is my vocal and I just cut the lows because I don't need those lows. There's some frequency leaks here, correct? But I'm not going to need them. So that's why I cut them. Because most of the time people call it bass roll. So you just get rid of the bass low end. Just think about it this way. Human ears can only hear between 20 Hz and 20 kilohertz. It's like peeling the bananas. Like, do you eat the bananas as whole or do you peel them before you eat them, right? Just think about it that way. I'm just trying to simplicize it for you ladies. Okay, we get rid of the bass and highs that we don't need in the mix. After, we go after these unwanted resonance parts. So ladies, this is like a tricky part. So you will totally enjoy this spectrum better if it was like this. But unfortunately, look at this. I have a peak here. I have peak here. These are all unwanted resonance. We do not want them in the mix. We get rid of them because why? After you process the entire signal, they just overlap, they cause a lot of mud in the mix. We don't want that. So we get rid of them. In mixing process, most of the time, you're going to feel like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this, but does it even make sense to me so far? No. It's not going to make sense to you in the beginning, but then you're going to slowly understand that actually you got to do a lot of cleanups. Clean. So what we do, we just slightly lower them. These peaks, we find these peaks and we kind of lower them. These are unwanted frequencies. This was probably because I was like singing too close to the microphone and it created some issues. And this unwanted resonance probably was because of my room, or I don't know why these are here, but it doesn't matter. I don't have to know why because I don't have a treated perfect recording room here. I am in my living room, as you can see in the background. Anyways, let's get to the point. We just get rid of all these unwanted frequencies. And guess what? It is called subtractive EQ. So we use subtractive EQ technique and we just slightly lower all these frequencies. We touch these points and we just lower them slightly. Okay. Okay, let's go back. Let's go to the next one. Okay, real good ear practice. What you can do, you can just pick a frequency and you can click on solo. So you can solo that frequency and move it on the spectrum to practice, to understand what this frequency is for you. So you can understand better. You can work better with the spectrum in time. But of course, this is going to take some time. Okay, let's jump to compressor. By the way, we're still following our list, the long list I put before. So we're still going through this whole list. Okay, compressors. Let's talk about compressors. But of course, we don't have that much time to talk about compressors the entire day. But let's just summarize it. Amplitude control. So what does that mean? Let's say, look at this. Just focus on this file, ladies. Just focus on this part, okay? What do you see here? Okay, I see a peak here. We talked about it previous weeks. I have a peak here, right? Exactly. Is it bad for me? Yes, I need to get rid of that peak. I need to tame that peak. It's very important. That's another reason we use compressors. We need to tame those peaks. And look at this. Here is part, here's part, and look at this. This is like so quiet. So what compressor does is taming these peaks, and it is bringing up the volume of these quiet parts. So what it does, makes it look like just like this. Look at this. Where's my peak here? Gone. Because why? I used the compressor. I put this compressor plug in, and now it's gone. So you can see quiet parts are like back finally. So this signal looks a little bit more fat. So that's what a compressor does to your signal. It makes it more fat and makes it more audible. And also each compressor has its own color, but we're not going to get into that. Okay, let's go back to an example. Look at this. This is my compressor, one of my favorite compressors actually. What it does, it just shows you everything in action. So what it does, look at the peak. When you see the peak, this compressor, what it did to my signal, it just lowered the volume and brings it back. But here is the peak. Here's how it's going to tame the peak. So that's what we want. We want compressor to tame those peaks. And look at this here. All these quiet parts, look at this. They are back. They're back in the game. Because our goal is to keep everything balanced. Look at this. It is fixing all my mistakes. Okay, let's just go to the next one. Okay, let's jump to another topic. Gate. Noise gates. So listen to the channels one by one and see where there is noise is happening. So sometimes we work, most of the time we work in our bedrooms, we work in our rooms, and there's like so much background noise, roommates or like neighbors, kids are crying in the background, you're trying to make music, record your next hit song, but all of a sudden, like all this background noise is happening. So what you can do, you can actually remove those quiet parts because they are more quiet than your vocals. How? Because they're far. Your vocal is right here. It's close to the microphone, right? So that's why, that's how we can actually get rid of them. If they're not loud enough, we can remove them, we can eliminate them before we start doing any processing on that signal. So let's get into let's give you an example. Just think about this. How tall to write, how loud to pass and join the others. Signals are loud enough to be on the roller coaster. So yeah, that's true. Mixing is actually a roller coaster, exactly. Anyways, what I'm trying to explain, if you're not loud enough, you're not going to be in the mix. And who's going to decide that? Me, because I'm going to be the one who is going to set the threshold, okay? So you set the threshold and you decide that, okay, I don't want sound to pass through the gate unless it's loud enough, okay? This is what you decide. This is your decision. That way you can eliminate the background noise a little bit. But you try to make sure you don't set the threshold too high, because otherwise it's going to make your vocals like super choppy and you don't want that. Just try to make it organic as much as possible. Okay, let's jump to the next one. Plosives, sibilants. What is plosives? These syllables are called plosives B and P. They do work amazing if you're beatboxing. So this is my friend Steven Kenner. He got really, really famous now. I'll say hi to him. So he was beatboxing for Broadway. Yeah. Anyways, if you're using, if there is B's and P's in the words in your lyrics, those are going to be plosive sounds. And how do we eliminate them? We use a pop filter. So that's how we get rid of them in the beginning, as we're recording. The sibilants, they sound like snake hiss, and we do not need them. We need to get rid of them. They exist between 6K, 8K, and plosives are around 150 hertz. So they're in the low parts, and this one is in the high frequency band. Plosive sounds. You put a pop filter between you and your microphone. We already talked about it, so I'm not going to go into it again. If you forgot to use a pop filter and your signal is popping everywhere, what you can do, you can just go here on any type of equalizer, and you can just remove that area. You can find the pop. You can look this. Here's the pop. Your vocals shouldn't be here, ladies. This means this is a pop. So you have to get rid of that. What you do, you just use subtractive EQ, and you set your Q and frequency, and you get rid of that. If you cannot get rid of this way, you just go on the spectrum, on the EQ, equalizer. Okay, let's talk about de-essers. How do we get rid of the snake sound that is causing issues to us during mixing? Live shows, these are not going to cause you any issues. But in the mix, these are going to be your worst enemies, okay? Just get rid of them. How do we get rid of them? We use de-essers. I don't really use these that much, but if I'm going to use some de-esser, I use this one, and I use this one. Waves de-esser I use most of the time. I personally try to fix them manually on the audio file. I splice them on audio file, and I get rid of those, and I just slightly reduce the gain of that sibilance. That's how I make it, because that way I can make it more organic. Because otherwise, what this is going to do to your signal is just going to remove all the frequencies in that area. So some of the parts, the S sound is just going to be so annoying to you. But most of the time, you do like the vibe. You do want a little bit high end there. You don't want to lose it. So that's why I do it manually. I just splice it, you splice the entire audio, and I find my annoying pops and annoying S sounds, his sounds, kind of slightly, lower the gain on them. I do it manually. But you can do it with the plugins. Clean up breaths. Ladies, this is a thing that most people are asking. Believe me, they do ask. Why do we even need to clean breaths? Why can't we just keep them? Yes, you can keep some of them, but most of the time, just try to clean them. If they're not necessary, if they're not giving your track any vibe, then clean them. Get rid of them. Because why? You're like, okay, these breaths are not loud enough. I just want to keep them. But what it does, when you put compressor, when you put limiter, when you start processing that signal, that breath sound is going to be super loud. And guess what? It is going to create mud. It is going to create mud in the mix. And you're not going to like that. You're not going to like how it sounds. You're not going to understand why it sounds really bad. But actually, most of the time, these breaths are coming back, and it's just making the track sound, creating mud in the mix. Okay, just let's pay attention to here. This was my vocal track, and guess what? What I did here, I have no idea what this is. This is probably some click sound with my mouse. I recorded and I used my mouse, and I just clicked on it, so probably that's the sound. Guess what? That is going to be a problem for me. So I have to go and cut that and get rid of that. That's important. You gotta get rid of all these unwanted things. Noise, background noise, like breaths, like clicks and stuff. Just get rid of them. So all mixing engineers are really good with the knife. I am not a mixing engineer, but still good with the knife. Good dialogue editors or audio editors need to use shortcuts. Splice, cut, splice, cut, splice, cut. That's what you do to your audio. You just splice it, you get rid of all those unwanted noise, background, clicks and stuff, and you get a clean audio and at the end. That way you can safely process that signal finally. Let's talk about frequency separation. We still follow the list, by the way, that long list I put in the beginning. We're still following that, by the way. Anyways, so let's say these are your vocals, okay? Vocals need to be here. Your synths need to be here. Your drums need to be here. Your bass need to be here. So what you do, you just take a look at all the file, all the instruments one by one, and you decide, you say that, okay, this synthesizer is in the mid area, and I have to make sure there's no leakage between bass area or highs. So I have to make sure that synthesizer stays there. That synthesizer needs to stay there. There shouldn't be any leakage. And when it comes to food, it's all about presentation. When it comes to music, mixing, yes, it's exactly the same. So what you do, you decide each instruments where they are going to be in the mix. Your vocals, where are they going to be? In the mid side, of course, midsection. So your bass has to be in the bass area, bass frequency area. You shouldn't have much stuff going on because it's a bass frequency. Like, why do you have to have so much information in the high ends? Just leave it to the percussions, leave it to the hi-hats, right? So that's what you do. You just treat each instrument carefully, decide which instrument is gonna be in which part in the spectrum. It's called frequency separation. You separate the frequencies. Okay, let's talk about it. Sometimes some engineers are using EQ flips. What they do, they just set these EQ, and what they do, they just copy this EQ, they just take it to the next, to the other instrument, and they just flip it. That's all they do. They just flip it. That way, two different instruments are gonna be heard more clear. Because what we did, we just flipped the equalizer. So, you know what? Let's just jump to the next one. This is like these are really advanced topics, ladies. Believe me, it's hard to explain all these in only 20 minutes. Okay. Why EQ separation is needed? Because there's so many overlapping frequencies. A lot of instruments are fighting in the area, in the same frequency area. Just like these two guys. Just think about it like that. This girl is our vocals, and this guy is a synthesizer. So the girl wants to beat the guy because the guy is the synthesizer. I think it shouldn't get in the way because vocals are the essentials. Most of vocals fight with the guitars and synths, just to give you an example. And bass frequencies, bass elements fight with kick drums and sub bass like 808. So that's what we do. We just have to treat them really carefully, and that's why EQ separation is needed. Okay, so we decide where to put them in the plate, basically. And how do we stop this fight? Most of the time, there are going to be a lot of overlapping frequencies, just like this, vocals and synthesizers. How do we fix it? We use panning. We can talk about panning later. We use mid-side EQ. We're going to talk about that too, don't worry. And we use space and reverb. We will get there too. So all these like advanced topics, we'll just get there, don't worry. So stereo image, anything happening between left and right ear is the area that you can work on. That's the stereo image. So what we do, just to give you an example, okay, I'm the vocal. Actually, let's take this girl again. This girl is the vocal, okay? She's gonna sit in the middle. She's gonna sit on the couch like a queen, okay? And this guy is a synthesizer, has to be on the sides. We're just gonna send this guy a little bit to the sides. That way it's not gonna interrupt with our vocals. Because why? We are making pop music. If we are making pop music, then vocal has to be in the front. And in the front of everything. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. During this entire process, we manage the volume. You remember the difference between gain and volume fader? Gain is still volume, but it's in the beginning of the signal. But volume is at the end of the signal. So what we do, we just make sure our gain staging is correct. What it means, we just want to make sure we are in the safe level, in the safe area to work on. Just to give you an example, this is your area to work on your songs. Just make sure you're not recording anything higher than -12. You can actually have some peaks around -6, -7. That's totally fine, and you can tame those peaks, don't worry. Or if you cannot, your mixing engineer can take care of it, don't worry. Just know that this is the general area you can work on. That way your mixing engineer can work on those between -12 and -6, and then your mixing engineer is gonna send all these this one single audio file to a mastering engineer. A mastering engineer is gonna take it to the level that you can finally sorry about my drawing skills. You can finally upload it on Spotify. You can finally release after the mastering engineer. Okay, let's jump to the next one. So entire process, mixing engineer is going to make adjustments on the levels, on the gain. So mixing engineer is going to control the gain professionally. That way we can get a balanced track to send it to mastering engineer. Okay, volume automation strategies. This is like a big topic, but most of the time this is like really underrated topic. What we do, volume automation, entire song, we make decisions in the entire song. We decide if it's gonna get a little bit louder in the chorus part. Why do we need to do that? Because guess what? Human ear are more responsive to loud signals. We use volume automation strategies, tricks, to get people into liking our songs. So what we basically do, we just give them some normal loud signal, and then in the chorus part, we just slightly increase it, and we get all the attention on the chorus part. And guess what? If you have a catchy chorus part, you win. You definitely win. And guess what? It's completely psychological. So we're using this trick to get people into liking our song. Just to give you an example, take the same signal, increase the volume. When human brain compares those two signals, my brain is gonna think that louder signal is the better one. That's why most of the producers, they most of the time end up finding themselves increasing the volume fader so they can satisfy their ears, their brain, basically. What could be your mixing strategy? Of course, you're not trying to become a mixing engineer, but this could be your mixing strategy. Some professional does that. For pop music, some engineers prefer to start with the vocals and build the entire track around the vocals because vocals are essential. For dance music, usually mixing engineers start with the kick and bass drum balance, and they make sure these two sound amazing, and they can just build the entire thing on top of this kick and drum and bass. That's what I normally do because I'm a dance music producer. I actually produce pop too. I produce anything. Anyways, panning. Let's talk about panning. Panning, you just send the signal to the left ear or right ear. And who's gonna make that decision? You. You are the boss. You're gonna make that decision. You wanna send the signal to the left or to the right? Yeah, do which one with it. Exactly. It means sending this instrument to the left side or the right side, or you can spread it in the stereo field, or you can split the signal, you can send them both to the left and right. You can also do that. That's called controlling your stereo image. So just to give you a basic example, again, I just need to remind you that this is not really like a mixing course. I'm just trying to explain why mixing could be important for you, or maybe why it's not really something you want to do. Basic mix panning, you just put the vocals in the front of everybody, and you can put the snares in the middle too. Bass and kick these definitely have to be mono, have to be in the middle. They have to come in from the middle to your audience. You can put the hats on the left, or maybe you can even decide. Sometimes in rock music, I put the snares on the slightly to the right. That's what I do. But pop music, electronic dance music, definitely in the middle. But I don't even use snares in dance music. I use claps and click sounds. I mix them, mash them together, because anytime I use a snare, it makes it sound like rock music, but actually what I'm making is dance music. So just be careful with I'm just being careful with the snare when it comes to dance music. Anyways, you can just place all these instruments to the left or right. You remember we talked about vocals? Vocals has to sit in the middle. Yes, so we're not going to send the vocals to the left or to the right. We're not going to do that. Vocal has to sit in the middle. And guess what? Since we can just split the synths, we can send them to the left or to the right, or we can find two very close synthesizer together, and we can send one of them to the left, one of them to the right, and they both have to play the same thing. By the way, it will be better if you can compose it that way. You can just send one to the left, one to the right, and that's way it's gonna sound more wide, and your vocals still get to sit in the middle. Okay, let's talk about space. So we kind of basically try to paint a picture in audience brain. So what we do, we tell people that, okay, our vocalist is here in this big concert hall, and she's here, she's singing, and this is the environment you are in. That's what we are basically doing with space. This is how we use the space to get people into liking our songs. If it's more spacey, that's going to be more reverb. If it's less spacey, if it's going to be like a little bit more friendly environment, like some studio like this, then it's going to be less spacey, and we're going to use less reverb. We're going to use different type of reverb for different conditions. But if you want to make it sound like concert hall, definitely go for hall or ambience or all those type of reverb. So you choose the type of the reverb. Depends on the environment you want to create in your audience brain. Okay. Or you can make it sound like song is playing in this type of environment. You can choose which space. You decide. Ladies, you are the boss. You decide which space. Okay? This is one of my favorite reverbs. You can all of these ladies, they all exist in your DAW. On your DAW, on Logic, on Cubase, all these exist in your DAW already. But you can always add you can always use like some third-party plugins to make it sound better. But all of you have like the reverb. All of you have all these plugins already in your DAW. So don't worry, you have access to all of this. Let's talk about delays. So what we do as a mixing engineer, we use delay for widening purpose. What we do, we make it wider, and we kind of get to create some presence with special effect delay presets. What we do, okay, let's just jump to the next one. What we do, let's say, I'm just giving you an example, just to give you an example. So, okay, this is Ariana Grande. Okay, Ariana Grande is singing to my left ear. Great. Okay, here's my ear. Here's my other ear. This is my left ear. This is my right ear. So Ariana Grande is singing to my right ear. Amazing. And she's right here, okay? Imagine Ariana Grande is in your living room and she's singing to your right ear. Great. Perfect. So, okay, let's check out this other Ariana Grande. What I do, Ariana Grande is here. And what I do, I just take this second signal and slightly delay that one. So now what happens, Ariana Grande is singing to my left ear, and she's right here. But this Ariana Grande, same girl, exactly the same person, is singing to my right ear, and she's a little bit delayed. So this little trick is creating widening in your sound. So you are recording this entire thing in a dead studio. There's nobody around you. There's no widening or anything. So how is that possible that I'm making it sound a little bit more wider? This is a technique we use. We also call it the Haas effect. We can explain those later. So this is the trick we are using as mixing engineers. We just make it wider. So all of a sudden you're thinking like, wow, this sounds so wide. But you know, it wouldn't sound so wide enough. If it wouldn't sound so wide if Ariana Grande was in your living room. Believe me, it sounds so wide, super wide after you process it in the mixing. Okay, let's jump to the next Ariana Grande. So there's another technique that we use. It's called parallel processing. So what it does basically, I'm just going to simplicize it. Okay, here's my Ariana Grande again. It's actually mono this time. One second, I have to enter my password again. It's perfect. So what I do, I'm not able to hear Ariana Grande's voice much. I need a little bit more definition. What I do, I just take the same signal. Let's just put this here. What I do, I just duplicate that signal, okay? Just picture that you're duplicating the same signal. What I do, I just take it here. Okay, now I've got two Ariana Grande, right? Mono. This one is mono. It comes to my face in the middle, in the mono. And this one is still mono, but what I do, ladies, I just squash this one a lot. A lot. What do I mean by that? I use compressor. Maybe ratio, I set the ratio to 8:1. So you compress it really hard. Okay, so let's say if this was like compressed 3:1, which is normally what we use for vocals most of the time because we do not want to compress too much. If this was like 3:1, probably it will be like this. But since I compressed it a lot, 8:1, okay, just to give you an example, now it is like super compressed. Now it looks like this. Okay, then what we do, how can we use this for our benefit? Okay, I scratch the signal, and what am I going to do? What is next? What we do in mixing process, we just send the signal here. Okay, 100%, let's say 100% wet. Okay, and this one, we slightly increase the volume of the signal. We slightly bring it back into our mixing, but slightly bring it back in the mix. Slightly bring it back. Let's say I bring it back until it sounds good. You slightly bring it back until it sounds good. And guess what? This is like finally 16%. I bring it back a little bit more, and 16%, it sounds great. 100% and 16%. So what we do, we just mix these. What we just did, we just basically mix these two signals on top of each other, and all of a sudden, Ariana Grande sounds like much more clear, much more defiant. Her voice is just much more clear, and it's more present. You know, you give the presence by doing parallel processing. That's what we do. It's called parallel processing. But again, this is an advanced topic. Again, I'm just trying to explain you what these mixing engineers are doing to your signal, just to give you like a little bit idea if you need to learn it or not, so you can get the idea. After the parallel processing, you can even, if you want more definition, you can always add some saturation. So what we do, saturation adds more harmonics, more definition to make it sound more present and audible. So you can actually compare these two pictures together, right? Look at this. This is Ariana Grande 1, and this is Ariana Grande 2. Look at the difference, ladies. This is more defined because it's saturated. So what you do, you just add saturation effect, and you just add more harmonics into your sound, into your audio on your audio file. But be careful, when you add saturation, you add harmonics, but you also add harmonics in the lower end too. So just make sure you get rid of those unwanted resonance you just created by adding saturation. So just make sure you control that too. Okay, let's jump to the next one. Limiter, lastly, limiter, what it does, takes everything, squashes it, and makes everything sound louder. Makes everything sound louder. Do not go too hard on your limiters. You don't even need to add so much limiters. you can use it, but when you just go too hard on the limiter, everything is gonna start peaking, and you're not gonna get the quality sound that you want. It's just gonna sound louder, ladies. It's not gonna sound. You're not gonna get the quality of it. It's just gonna sound louder, and you're liking it just because it's loud. So just leave it to the mastering engineer if you can. So limiter is the big brother of a compressor. So compressor is this. Limiter is the big brother. It just squashes and brings up the quiet parts like this. So it's just make everything sound louder. But what I do normally, I try not to go on too hard on the limiters. What I do, I use clippers instead. If I see a peak there, if I want to get rid of it, I just put a clipper on it. Basic clipper, any type of clipper will work. I just get rid of that unwanted high volume amplitude. So I can manage my peaks that way. So I won't have to use limiter to just cut that part, limit, bring the whole thing up. You're thinking you're doing one thing, but you actually are doing 10 other things with the limiters. So try to go easy on the limiters. Now you know why mixing is so much fun. You're like, oh my God, this is great. I really want to be a mixing engineer now. You might think that way, but actually maybe you're thinking this way. At least you know why you might not even need to learn it at all. So now you know at least what mixing engineers do to your signal, what mixing engineers do to your song. So now you get the idea. Thank you so much, ladies, and take care. See you next week. I need some water.